My name's Eddie Winters. You're tuned in to the rock and roll coup d'etat. I got Jeremy Wheat on the hot seat today.
All gunned up.
And we've got a incredible and very special guest calling in all the way, or actually we're calling him all the way in the UK, in England. Ron Griffiths is joining us today. Ron, how are you doing this morning?
Hello, Eddie. I'm okay.
Very
Thank
well.
you very much. Thanks for asking me to come on your show.
Thank you for being on the program. We got a little bit of applause.
Welcome, Ron.
That is for you. It is.
Stop.
That is it.
As the kids say.
We are excited to have you on. Just an incredible journey that you've gone through, being original member of the Iveys, of course, soon to become Badfinger. And we were playing music of yours all morning long and talking about your history with the group. Of course, you're being signed to Apple Records, working with the Beatles and all of that. And, of course, leading up to that, recently, as of 2013, you played a tribute concert to Pete Ham with a lot of the surviving members of both the Iveys and Badfinger, and have been doing, and also we're attending the plaque ceremony honoring Pete Ham. Can you tell us? Let's start off with that. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, paying tribute to your good friend Pete Ham?
Well, I certainly can. Before I start on this, can I just tell you that I can hardly hear you?
Is that right?
Yep, you're very, very weak coming through.
I'll give you a little bit more juice. How about now? Can you?
I'll get a bit more.
There we go. I'll try to talk as loud as possible.
Oh, that's okay. That's a bit better. Well, first of all, when I first got wind of that tribute concert, I was blown away. I didn't realize they were going to put a show together. I know that Swansea City Council were going to put a blue plaque up outside the railway station where the name of the band, the Iveys, came from.
Right.
Okay.
So the first thing that I got told about a concert was by Bob Jackson, who was like a latter-day member of the band, as I'm sure you all know.
Right.
The worry we had was that it was all from a distance. Di Jenkins lives in the west of England in a place called Taunton. He's one of the original members of the Iveys band.
Right.
I live just north of London, and it was all about logistics because Bob, who was organising the thing, lives in Coventry, which is about a 2-hour drive from north of here. And that's where it got complicated because we had very, very little rehearsal time. But I don't know where to go from here. We actually just were so blown away that the city council were going to put our names on the plaque to start with. So, it was a real buzz.
You guys got together to do the tribute show. And talk a little bit about the experience of that, because as you said, you got together. You're playing with guys that you may have not seen in years. How much I guess preparation did actually go into the performance, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, Bob's section of it, Bob and his members, he got a scratch band together. He had his rhythm section from the Fortunes, the band that he works with regularly. They had a lot of rehearsal time between them because they did quite a fair bit of the Badfinger catalogue.
Right.
Jenkins and myself had very little time to rehearse. We only had 3. We had 2 rehearsals in Coventry. One of them was a run-through with Bob at his house. The second one was just a band run-through in a studio in the middle of the city in Coventry.
Right.
The next time we met up was for the night before, a little jam-cum rehearsal at a hall in Swansea. So we had very little time, Di and myself. But I'm losing track of I'm losing the thread here.
Well,
we did 6 tunes altogether.
Right.
The only Badfinger record we actually did, but because I was the only surviving member on the disc, was Come and Get It.
Right.
But the rest of it was just Ivy's tunes that nobody'd ever heard of, I think. We did a few well-known ones.
Of course, and I was going to commend you because I've seen some of the video footage from that performance, and you are playing bass. It looks like you're 25, just hopping around, having a great time.
I hadn't done a gig for 13 years at that stage.
Is that right?
Believe it or not.
But you look so comfortable on stage, and I imagine that's a pretty sizable theater
No, it was 1,000 seats.
Wow.
And it was pretty much sold out, so we were chuffed with that. Really pleased with that.
That's incredible, incredible honor, and of course the what came first, was that the plaque and the show, was that kind of in one kind of celebration?
The actual plaque unveiling took place around midday.
Right.
And there was quite a fair turnout for that. There were several hundred people turned out for it. And then there was like a reception after it in a hotel which overlooks that particular part of Swansea.
Right.
And the actual show itself kicked off about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Wow.
The annoying thing is there was a professional recording done of that actual show, with a full pack of thing, decent mics, decent cameras and everything. But all you've got on YouTube is somebody's video iPhone copy of it.
Right.
And somebody else recorded the backing, and they were married up by Dan Matavina.
Oh, right.
Before I say another word, can I just say I'm glad I didn't let you down for this interview, unlike a certain other member of this band.
Oh yeah, well, we appreciate that too.
I got to be honest, it's quite a sensation to be able to call somebody and get them on the line to do to do the show.
Well, I feel privileged that and pleased that you've asked me. I'm just you dragged me out of obscurity.
Oh well, yeah. I hope it didn't hurt too much. We're glad to have you.
Like hindsight being 20.
Carry on. I'm cutting you short here.
We're very happy to have been stood up by Joey Molland so that we could have this time with you.
Of course, exactly. So going into this, can we let's talk a little bit about the history. You played with the Iveys, obviously, and of course it turned into Badfinger. But let's go back a little bit and talk about the formation of you meeting Pete Ham and you getting into playing. I know that you played when you were a young child playing in the Jaguars, an instrumental group. How did you come about crossing paths with Pete and playing with him?
Well, I suppose you could say I was headhunted for that band. The Jaguars initially were an instrumental band, then we took a vocalist on, and I did duets with him, and we got better and better at singing, if you like.
Right.
I think the Iveys, as they were then, were probably called the Black Velvets or something like that. They wanted to replace their bass player, and somebody told Peter and David about my ability or my availability, for one way of putting it. They came and saw me doing a gig, came and saw the Jaguars doing a gig in a hotel in Swansea city centre. We were doing a wedding reception, if my memory serves me well. We were playing away, and I didn't recognise them to start with. His brother Alwyn, and Peter were standing in the front of the stage watching us. And when we went off for a break, they actually came up and asked me, would you like to come and have an audition with our band? So I was quite taken aback. I didn't know who Peter was. I didn't know who Di was.
Right.
So I thought, well, why not? I was getting a bit cheesed off playing with the Jaguars because we weren't a particularly hip band at the time.
Right.
So I went along to an audition with Peter and David at a school up on Town Hill in Swansea. The first thing I ever heard Peter playing, you're going to love this, he had a funny guitar made by a company called Fenton Viol, I think they were called. He started to play, the big hit at the time was Bruce Chanel's Hey Baby.
Right.
Sure.
And Frankie Bloomfield, our guitar player in the Jaguars, never played a seventh chord in his life.
Right.
And I was hearing all these bluesy licks coming out from Pete. And I thought, yes, I'll have some of this.
Right.
I enjoyed what I heard. I knew that I could tell then that there was something special about him.
Some exotic tones.
And so consequently, I threw the job in with the Jaguars and joined the Black Velvets, who eventually became the Iveys.
Right, and you, was it you that suggested the name the Iveys?
Well, that was a long way down the line. We'd done a lot of rehearsing prior to going out and doing gigs. We used to rehearse at a place behind the main railway station in Swansea. And on the way back out home one night after a rehearsal, the placard outside the taxi rank, which is what the pull-in outside the station, is called Ivy Place.
Wow. So
I just came up with this. I said, there's a name. Why don't we call ourselves the Iveys? And it just went from there.
Right. Wow.
There was no brainstorming about it. the others seemed to like the idea of the name, and it just went from there. That's where the name the Iveys came from.
And at this time, you guys are playing, local shows here and there.
That's right.
How did the I guess the momentum pick up for the group? I mean, I know you guys got to play with a lot of touring groups like the Moody Blues and Roy Orbison. I guess when he came to the UK, how did
No, not Roy Orbison.
No, that's incorrect.
Swansea had a good live music scene back in those days, and there were quite a few really superior bands down there at that time. We just got better and better and better,
right,
as you do when you play regular work. There was a good live music scene. There were lots of venues to play. Yes, and most of the packages, I said they're not packages, one-night gigs that people used to come down. There were about 3 venues in Swansea where the name acts of the time used to come, like the Kinks, the Yardbirds, everybody but the Beatles and the Stones, I guess.
Right.
One of the venues was called the Ritz. Another one was the Big T, the Tivoli, down in a place called Mumbles, just around Swansea Bay. And there's another one which eludes me, the Embassy Ballroom or the Tower Ballroom. They all had all these big bands coming down that were doing well in the 60s.
Sure. And you guys are just getting to play on these shows, developing.
Yeah, one-nighters, and another good venue, it was Swansea University, which used to get the really big bands down there. We actually had John Mayall's Blues Breakers and the Who down there.
Wow.
As a support band, we were to them, among others. Great places to play.
So, and you must have been, I mean, as you're watching this and being a part of it and seeing your band getting bigger and getting more success by playing.
Yeah, and rubbing shoulders with all these well-known names.
Right.
It rubs off on you,
Oh, I bet. And I mean, it must have been a thrill. Tell me a little bit about the, I mean, I know you guys came in contact with Ray Davies from the Kinks.
Well, that was after we moved up to London.
Is it so?
I mean, if you wanted in order of appearance,
yeah, we
were doing a gig in a place called Ammanford near Swansea, about 14 miles away, and we were support band to the Mojos, and their manager was a name you must be familiar with, Bill Collins.
Right.
I'll skip a few pages. He was, not that I'm reading anything, by the way.
Right.
He was instrumental in getting us up to London. He got an opening for us. We had an audition for a top 10 recording artist named David Garrick, who had a hit of a Rolling Stones cover, Lady Jane. We went up and did the audition in the West End of London. There were about 20 other bands auditioning, and he picked us.
Wow.
Now, to move on to what you asked me, what did you ask me?
Talking about coming in contact with Ray Davies and
That's old age for you.
It's quite all right. Coming in contact with Ray Davies.
Yeah.
I guess that was
Thanks
in
for that.
mid-60s, 65 or something.
We used to work for the Arthur House Agency doing gigs, which is what David Garrick's, he was in the same stable.
Right.
Ray Davies got to hear, Bill Collins was always singing our praises to the Arthur House Agency about our songwriting ability, and we had all this stuff on tape. We also had the Kinks road manager living at the house at the same time.
Is that right?
Wow.
He had all the Kinks stage gear at the house, and we used to do gigs as support band to the Kinks. And it went from there. Ray Davies got to hear about the stuff that we had in the can, came around to the house, listened to some of the stuff, and really liked it. And he was the first person that took an interest in recording the Iveys. He took us to a little 4-track studio down in a place called the Old Kent Road in southeast London.
Right.
And he recorded 4 tunes. He was the first to take an actual interest in the band.
And I know that some of these tracks may or may not have been bootlegged. Have these tracks been officially released? No,
I don't think so. They're just bootleg things, and they're very rough sounding recordings. They're very muggy. Whoever's got the masters has probably got a little gold mine. I don't know.
Of course.
But they're out there somewhere. To name the titles of the songs, crikey. One was a song by Pete called Taxi.
Right.
One of mine called I Believe in You Girl.
Oh, that's a great song.
Crikey, I can't think of any more. I think you've got me. I am creeping ever towards the grave, you know.
No pressure. I mean, it's
Those are the two that come to mind. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know.
Sure. The I Believe in You girl, as you guys did that at the Pete Ham tribute.
Yeah, well, we didn't actually rehearse that, believe it or not.
Is that right? That is
No chance, no time.
It came across exceptional. I mean, and
Well, we told Bob we were going to do it anyway, and we did it.
it's such a phenomenal song, and
We actually ran through it the night before at that quick rehearsal we had, but the drummer wasn't there. He didn't show up, so he just sort of bluffed it when we did it on the gig at the Grand.
Right. Well, very well done. I gotta have to admit. So did anything? I mean, obviously, when you guys recorded these demos, for Ray, did anything kind of did they help kind of get the attention that led to going towards Apple years later, or was that pretty much just an effort that kind of was lost at the moment?
I think what impressed us, Ed, was the fact that we'd done a lot of demo recordings in the little sweatbox studio we had at Park Avenue.
Right.
And, of course, the playback never sounded anything terrific because it was coming through a small speaker on the Revox machine.
Right.
So when we did these tracks with Ray Davies, we were getting playback through the mountainous speakers that you get behind the mixing desk in a recording studio.
Sure.
And we were blown away. You know, Mike and myself, we couldn't get over the fact that the bass drum and the bass was coming at us like Cream or Hendrix. You know?
Right.
It was astounding. So you could say that was a real kick up the backside to all of us. You know, I thought, God, do we really sound like that?
Right.
And maybe that was the spur that gave Pete the impetus to come out with some of the stuff he came out with at that time.
And what was the talking about? I mean, you've got two great songwriters, including yourself, three great songwriters, in the group.
You're being too kind.
Well, I mean,
from my aspect, you are. I was never a songwriter. I'm a singer. I would have been a singer of Peter's.
Right. I mean, nonetheless, I mean, you definitely penned a few great tracks, but watching
some of them a bit off the wall. I'm very proud of the Irandy, needless to say.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that stands toe to toe with any of the great songs of Badfinger or the Iveys.
And I was going to say, watching these, watching Tom and Pete develop as songwriters, it must have been an interesting course of events while you're playing in this group and they're presenting, more sophisticated songs to the band. What was that experience like? As far as, I mean, was it something conscious that you were watching them develop and realizing, wow, we've really, we've really got something under our belt here?
Well, it was just a process of evolution, I suppose.
Right.
I can't say any more than that. Where I missed out was Pete's songwriting really came to the fore after I'd gone, unfortunately.
Sure.
To this day, I regret not being around to be on the stuff that he recorded after I'd gone. I mean, there are some gems on the first Iveys album and the Magic Christian one. I mean,
sure.
How could I not be proud of being on Carry On Till Tomorrow for a start? I mean, that's a marvelous
huge
song and it's beautifully produced.
Fantastic. We played that
I
early.
just wish I'd been on a bit more of that, you know. We were essentially, in the early days, Mal Evans' plaything.
Right. And how did you come across meeting Mal Evans?
That was a case of Bill Collins knew Mal from the Liverpool days.
Is that right?
And we had a residency every now and again in the Marquee Club in London. He bumped into Mal on one occasion in central London. Mal asked him how he was getting on, and he said, "Oh, I've got a lovely little band. You ought to come and have a listen." And he brought him down to the Marquee. We had about 200 or 300 folk following us down there, you know, as a resident.
Right.
A residency. Mal came down, really enjoyed the gig, you know, because we had this rapport with the crowd.
Right.
He enjoyed the noise we were making, and he came back to the house, and he was the next one to have a listen to all the little gems we thought we had on the demos, you know,
sure.
On the demo tapes. And that's where we got involved with Mal. That's how he was so impressed. He took the tape down to Apple, and the rest is history, as they say.
Right. And Mal, introduces, I guess the rest of the guys in the Beatles, Apple Records, to the sound of the Iveys. What was the, I guess, how did they end up reaching out to you to say, hey, we want to work with you?
Well, on the strength of listening to the stuff, you must remember by then, Di Jenkins had left the band and we had Tommy Evans in the band.
Right.
You know, this is a good 18 months after Tom joined.
Wow, okay.
Well, we were just blown away that they wanted to sign us, of course. You know,
Right.
They were the in thing at the time. I think if any band worth their salt back in 1960, when was it, 68, 67?
Right.
It was never an ambition to be Apple recording artists. We wanted to get a record deal, certainly.
Sure.
But to get a deal with Apple was just, you know, mind-blowing out of our skulls. You know?
Yeah.
We were just so absolutely... Well, I'm lost for words even now.
Right. I mean, it's. I would imagine then. I mean, that was probably the biggest opportunity a band.
Yeah, you
could
couldn't
ever
have wished for better.
Right. And so, talk a little bit about the experience of going there. Did you guys start? Did it take off right away as far as the Iveys? They set you up with a recording contract. Did you go immediately to start making demos or recordings? What was the that process of getting started recording under the Apple Records label?
Well, to start with, they didn't think any of the demos that they'd listened to, as much as they liked them, they didn't think there was anything there strong enough to put out as a single.
Huh. Is that right?
Until one day we came up with Tommy's song, Maybe Tomorrow.
Right.
We took that down as a basic band track, just two guitars, bass, and drums, and the vocals on the top. They really liked that. They said, right, we're going to give you that. You can record that. That'll be your first single. And in between times, we'd been recording other stuff, which eventually would go out on an album. But they particularly liked Maybe Tomorrow.
Right.
On the strength of that, they got us a bit of limited airplay on the radio. They shoved us on a package tour, which was doing the whole of the UK and Ireland. Gene Pitney was top of the bill.
Wow.
The Marmalade were riding high at the charts at the time, and they had Joe Cocker on there as well.
Wow.
And we were sort of bottom of the bill. But on the strength of that, they thought that Maybe Tomorrow was going to be a smash hit. Well, it did very little in this country. It did quite well on the continent and in Japan, and it got into the Billboard Hot 100 as well at number 49, was it? 47?
Wow.
Which was quite a feather in our caps, but it did nothing over here.
Right.
But that was the first. That's what they took. That's what got us the first record, and it actually went out under the name the Iveys, of course.
Right,
But it did very little in this country.
I mean, it usually sometimes those kinds of things, we've interviewed a lot of guests that where the initial release doesn't have the impact, but then over time it finds its audience. And maybe that's the case for the Iveys with those those initial tracks.
It should have done better, but it was released at the wrong time. It was released not too far before Christmas, when all the major established acts were getting the airplay that they always would get.
Right, of course.
Because we were non-entities, even though we were on Apple, nobody'd heard of us. We didn't get very much airplay. I think that was a major factor in it not reaching the heights it should have done, because it's a damn good song.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Gems, that is.
And it's so being around. Going from this, you're rubbing shoulders early on, playing with other bands, and then you get signed to this Apple Records, and then you're in with the label. You've had a single released. You're basically now rubbing elbows with the biggest band of the world, the Beatles. Did you have any kind of experiences? I guess before we get to Come and Get It, but did you have any experiences with the Beatles that you recall as far as like seeing them work and that kind of environment?
Not really, no. I can't honestly say. It was after we'd recorded, or up until recording Come and Get It. They knew of our existence, but we didn't actually have any major deals with them at all. We didn't cross their paths at all.
But but when you were on Apple, obviously, you obviously were working with them at some point. Tell us a little bit about the the experience of Come and Get It. I'd heard or read that that they presented that song. Paul presented that song as a response to something that was said in an interview.
By me.
Exactly.
Well, what happened was there was no direct input from the Beatles up to that point.
Right.
A magazine came round to the house. I was the only one who was in at the time, I think. First to respond. And the magazine was called Disc and Music Echo, I think. They just, went through a routine of questions.
Sure.
And they were trying to get across to their readers that it was all sweetness and light being on Apple. And I just casually mentioned, we feel neglected at times. We've been taking song after song after song down there. We released Maybe Tomorrow, and it didn't do anything. And I think, quite honestly, I said, we're feeling quite neglected.
Sure.
And now that article went out. Paul McCartney must have read it, got on the phone to Bill. Bill, I've got a song. I've just been reading what Ron said in the paper. I've got a song I'd like you to have a listen to. He said, I'm up to my eyeballs in work at the minute. I've been asked to do 3 songs for a film coming out in the near future, and quite frankly, I haven't got the time to devote to this. If you do this song, you can do the other 2 songs for the film. So he came a few days later. We were all waiting for it one Sunday morning, I think it was. We couldn't believe that, let's face it, a living legend is going to come around to visit us.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, he brought this demo disc around and shoved it on the turntable on our stereo system. And we listened to it. Of course, it sounded great. It was his version. And he said, you can have this as a single if you provide 2 other songs for the film, which was The Magic Christian, as it turns out.
Right.
So we went down to the studios, I think it was at Pinewood, and we saw the rushes, as they call them, the clips they wanted to us to drop in 2 songs on.
Right.
And on the strength of that is how we got Come and Get It.
Wow. And
the other 2 songs that were provided for the film were Carry On Till Tomorrow, of course, as you know, and
right.
Rock of All Ages, which unfortunately I didn't manage to make because I was in bed with chickenpox.
Oh man!
Right.
Now,
but that's how we came to get Come and Get It, and how we got involved with Paul.
Ron, this is Jeremy. That sounded weird. We have a saying in America that the squeakiest wheel gets the most grease. And it would
Sorry?
We have a saying in America that the squeakiest wheel gets the most grease. And it would seem when you were in Disc and Music Echo, which is a funny name for a magazine, I think, by any conventional measure, and on the surface you might be seen as lamenting the attention that you were getting from Apple, but that was the direct effect, and you got Come and Get It off the strength of that.
If I hadn't whinged and moaned, maybe he wouldn't have given us the chance.
Right.
I'm sorry I didn't catch you then, Jeremy. I must repeat myself here. I can't hear you very well. Both of your voices are coming through really, really thin on this line.
Then I'm going to really hover over the mic.
Yes,
here.
we're going to give you as much juice as we can.
Yeah.
So,
you'll have to speak up.
You've got it.
I sure will.
You've got it. Ron, there's a story, apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong, did you witnessed a performance, a private performance of Hey Jude performed by Paul McCartney?
Well, it wasn't just me; it was Mike as well.
Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? I'd love to know about this.
Okay, well, we were down at a studio called Trident down in the West End of London.
Right.
I think we'd gone down for some overdubs. We hadn't taken much kit down. We were just, I think it was just Pete and Tom were overdubbing something. Mike and myself were sitting on the studio floor. Back in those days, I used to smoke. We were sitting there having a cigarette and a coffee. Paul McCartney comes down the stairs from where the control room is, introduces himself again. Hello, lads. He said, I quite like that one I'm listening to up there. He said, I forget what the song was. And he said, listen to this. He said, this is going to be our next single. So there's a Steinway Grand on the studio. He sits behind it, and Mike and I are sitting in the curve, on the grand piano,
right,
leaning on it, watching him. And he bursts into Hey Jude. Now, nobody in the world had heard it except for Mike and myself.
Wow.
Now, we're looking at each other. Is this really happening to us? he's given us a song that nobody else has heard. And of course, back then, nobody had mobile cell phones.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, you couldn't do an impromptu snap. Some of the things I wished I could have taken pictures of, you wouldn't believe.
Sure.
But yes, that's absolutely true. Mike and myself were the first two people outside of the Beatles, maybe, to hear that song in the world.
Did you sing the na na nas? Did you? I was going to ask. Did you do the na na nas with him?
No. Well, we hadn't heard it before.
Of course.
But the funniest part of all was when he'd finished, we were walking back up the stairs up to the control room. I said, "Where do you keep getting all this stuff from, Paul? You've got a never-ending supply of stuff in your head." And he said, and then he went back down. And he went through a few snatches, and he said, "Well, that bit there sounds like a bit of, I forget the song he mentioned now." He was likening parts of it to other songs.
Right.
Which I found astounding, Yeah, he wasn't at all big deal about it. There's a bit of Spanish Harlem in there. He was going, and he wasn't bigging himself up, shall we say.
Right. That's it. It's pretty interesting. Let's return to the story of Come and Get It. Now, this is a pivotal point for the group. And obviously you played bass on it. You actually we played a track, a bootleg track of your vocal take, which was like a one-off that you didn't really have any preparation, no back.
Well, no, when we first went into the studio, nobody was earmarked to sing it. So
right.
He said to Pete, let's hear you, Pete. So we'd already recorded something of a backing track for it.
Sure.
Pete sang over it. He wasn't too impressed. He said, "Right, Ron, you have a go." So I ran through it. And he said, "You sound a bit like Reg Presley." I don't know if you remember the Trogs.
Right,
yeah,
of course.
With a girl like
I
you.
was probably pushing it too hard. I don't know. But it was all dry runs. And, of course, there was no double tracking or any reverb or anything. Then he gave Tommy a bash. And Tommy got the gig, as the saying goes.
Right.
I'm convinced it was the Liverpool connection because Tommy was from Liverpool.
Right.
That sounds like sour grapes, but it's not really.
Well, it's interesting. So the track comes out, and now from an outsider's perspective, I mean, you were an integral part of the group. I mean, you sang a lot of songs, did the leads, wrote some songs. Dear Angie was, released as a single, follow-up. You were a key member in the Iveys. And, of course, you recorded the Come and Get It, and then at some point you were, I don't know, nudged out of the group. How did that come about, and was that something that, did you see that coming, or was that coming as a surprise to you?
Well, I couldn't say I could see it coming.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I was a major part of that band. Recording-wise and stage-wise are two different hats. I did the bulk, if not as much more lead singing on stage than the other two lads.
Right.
But because Peter and Tommy sang their own songs, so to speak, they got the bulk of the recording work, vocal-wise. Now, what was I going to say? It's happened again.
Coming, I guess we're talking about...
Prompt me.
Oh, yeah. We're talking about being, I guess, departing from the group and it being a surprise.
Yeah, well, we're on the road a lot. We're working a lot.
Right.
I was the only one at that stage. I'd got married by then. I had my wife, Maureen, was expecting a baby, and I did the honourable thing, and I married her. I was very much in love with her. She was a cracking-looking lady.
Right.
When we came back from gigs, naturally enough, I wanted to spend time with Maureen.
Sure.
Bill Collins didn't like the idea, and this is really old-fashioned. Back in the 60s, if you were in a band and you were like an icon for females, it wasn't seen to be the done thing to be married. If you think about it, John Lennon's marriage to his missus was kept in the dark for quite a long while.
They kept those things secret.
Bill resented the fact that he resented any of us having relationships, to be perfectly honest with you.
Wow.
I think he just created bad blood. He just didn't like the fact I was married. We'd come back from gigs, and I don't know if it was a deliberate ploy on behalf of Bill and Tommy, but we'd come back from gigs, I'd go back up to my room with Maureen, and the baby would be asleep, little Jason, and Tommy would put his music on at God knows what time in the morning, 1, 2 or 3 in the morning, turn it up loud, wake the baby up, and just created bad blood.
Right.
Now, I'm convinced that this was a deliberate ploy on behalf of Bill Collins, just to create an atmosphere. Then they must have had meetings behind my back that, Ron's not one of the boys anymore.
Right.
He's married now, blah, 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 this sort of thing.
Right, and
I think they wanted to have the general consensus was, shall we replace Ron? So Peter and Mike didn't want me to go. Tommy sided with Bill. They went down to Apple's offices down in Savile Row and put the story to Derek Taylor, who was the Beatles or Apple's publicist at the time.
Right.
And he had the casting vote, and he sided with Tommy and Bill, and that was my goodbye note.
And it was and was that? I mean, you must have been shocked. I mean, obviously,
I was devastated because I put all the donkey work in. I'd done all the graft. I was certainly no weak link in that band.
Sure.
But I thought I was doing the right thing by Maureen at the time. She didn't stand by me and say, "You're staying where you are. You're not going." She was happy because of all the bad vibe that was going on in the house.
Right.
She was just happy that I was going to go, and because of the way that it had got, it was a nasty atmosphere. It was very, very uncomfortable to live. We couldn't afford to move out and live into a place of our own because the money was not forthcoming. We were pretty much living on our uppers at the time. So I couldn't really argue about it. I just thought I was doing the right thing, so off I went.
Man.
Very much to my... I resent the fact and I regret it, but, that's the way it went.
Jeremy and I were discussing this earlier, but, I mean, in a sense, in part of thinking about it, because you were out of the group at that time and they went off to be Badfinger, to the public, and then, of course, the financial issues that they ran into with the management. In a sense, you could look at it like you really kind of got a lucky a break in the sense of avoiding some of that turmoil. If you're looking at it in a positive light, I mean, because it seems like such a incredible amount of pain that these guys went through once they became Badfinger officially. And it had a lot of the music or money taken from them.
Oh yeah, that was hell.
Yeah.
You're right in as much as if there is a silver lining to it. I wasn't dragged down into the pits of despair that Pete and Tommy got themselves into. That's
right.
For sure. I don't know where to start here. I mean, I've on the subject of money. Do you want me to say this?
Oh, go nuts! Yeah.
when I left the band, I signed for a check for the royalty cut from Come and Get It.
Very often this
happens.
happens.
About 18 months. I nagged Bill, because it had been a fair-sized hit. Eventually, they told me I was going to get 7,000 UK pounds out of the deal.
Wow.
Out of the record. I ended up getting £3,500 less income tax from the inland revenue over here. And that was all I ever got out of it. Now, there's stories go round that I signed my rights away. I didn't. I just signed for a check.
Right.
Ever since then, Joey Mullen's been getting my cut, if you like. I should have had Apple's... There's a company that called Goldblatt's. They're accountants in London. All Apple publishing rights goes in there. I should be getting income for sales of music and a portion of Apple publishing. I get nothing at all. Joey gets all this. Even for Come and Get It, which he's not on.
This
has been
still
going
happen?
on ever since then. Now, they had a court case in 1985 in the High Court in London to reapportion and distribute the royalties into correct channels. I was never summoned to this.
Ugh.
If they did summon me via the mail, I never received anything in writing.
Right.
Nobody ever phoned me, so I missed out on the 1985 court case. And ever since then, Joey Mullen has been getting my cut, if you like, up until he joined the band.
Wow.
Now, that's my main beef with Joey. I've got no gripe against him as a musician. His contribution was invaluable to the band. There's no doubt in that.
Of course.
But if I've got any grouse against him, it's because of his ability to be a human being with a conscience.
And I'm going to
say, taking my cut all this time, up until about 2 or 3 years ago. There's a company in America called Sound Exchange. I don't know if you're aware of them.
Right, they do the digital.
They pay out airplay money for a performance on the air.
Right.
At that stage, Joey Mullen was getting my airplay up until Dan Matavina intervened, and he made them aware of my existence, and they stopped Joey getting my airplay cuts. So consequently, ever since then, I do get. It's limited, I must admit. It's hardly a king's ransom, but I do get little pockets of money every now and again from Sound Exchange.
Seems to me you have a legitimate grievance, Ron.
Well, I don't want to keep. It sounds like I'm a complete and utter. I'm not a miserable, vindictive person at all. I'm just saying, if it had been the other way around, and I'd been in Joey's position,
right?
Yeah.
And I realised that I was getting monies I shouldn't have been legitimately getting, I would have just reversed the procedure. I'd have said, look, let's draw a line there. That's Ron's, that's mine. But he's never ever done it. I've just been insulted all the way down the line by Joey.
I was going to ask,
I think you better leave that there.
Has that been resolved as of yet? I guess in 2015. Are you properly receiving the?
No, I get nothing via Goldblatt's. If I wanted to reverse that, I'd have to go back to the High Court and spend thousands and thousands of pounds, which I haven't got,
wow,
to contest it.
To say nothing of the fact that
if he wanted to, Joey could probably right the wrong.
Yeah.
With a minimum fuss, but he's not interested.
That's incredible.
And that's where it lies. I don't want to go into it anymore. That's
Ron,
my beef with Joey.
Sure.
In the interest of contouring subject matter, another thing that Eddie and I were talking about is when you were coming up. So you're playing in the Jaguars, and that was a Shadows influence band. A lot of our American...
The Shadows and various others, yeah.
Sure. But a lot of our American audiences would be familiar with a band called The Ventures.
That's right.
They were our big...
they were your big instrumental band.
Exactly. The Shadows are huge. I'm a big Shadows, Hank Marvin fan. And along those lines, my first instrument was bass as well. I always had guitars around the house, but I started playing in bands on bass first. Was bass your first instrument?
Yeah. In actual fact, I must be honest, it's my only real instrument. I'm a mediocre guitar player, half decent bass player. I'm all percussion in my head. Mike Gibbons once said to me, "I wish I had your percussive knowledge in my head, Ron."
Oh wow!
Wow.
So you've got a drummer's time.
He was quite legit about it.
That
as good a drummer as Mike was, I'd be doing tapping out things, and he'd say, "Where the hell did that come from?"
Right. Another interesting fact of speaking of your bass playing is you worked, I guess, with the doing work with the Iveys. You worked with the legendary producer Tony Visconti. Do you have any recollections or memories of working with him? Because I mean, as some of the listeners might know, I mean, he went on to produce a bulk of David Bowie's
and
T-Rex, and said this was an early I guess workings with the Iveys.
That's right.
Did you have any kind of direct chatter with Tony as far as your bass playing or your?
Oh yeah, quite often he loved. I had a strange way of playing, and I probably still have. I used to on the downstrokes of my fingers. I used to tap. The upper frets as I was hitting a note, and it came out with a harmonic come octave on the top.
Right.
He thought that was marvelous. I'm not talking about slap bass playing.
No, but
it's just the way I used to bang the string on the top of the bridge end of the neck.
And you would be getting a false harmonic,
and it used to come out with this overtone sort of harmonic. He liked my playing. He was a really nice fella. Was Tony? I got on well with him.
It's incredible to think that, I mean, he's working with you guys and then going off and having
Well, he went from strength to strength, didn't he?
exactly. I mean, and it's just a huge, but it also puts your work with the Iveys obviously in that string of huge artists, and it's a really a nice, I guess, shoulders to be rubbing against. You know what I mean?
So, Ron, if I can, and if you can hear me, when you picked up the bass, can you think of someone who was doing it at the time that made you gravitate towards that instrument? Maybe like Jet Harris from the Shadows. Yeah. Who
No,
was
what did it for me was when I was a really young whippersnapper. My dad had a pretty good record collection of old 78s. Ranging from choral to big band to jazz and to the crooners, Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra, etc. He had a really, the radiogram, as it was called in those days, in our living room, had a good sized bass speaker in it, which the bass used to jump out of.
Oh man!
And that's what got me into it. I've always had a natural ear for harmony, and I've got a natural percussive bent, if you like.
Right.
And that's where bass playing came. I just love the power of the bass, and that's what encouraged me to take it up.
And for all of our whippersnapper listeners, the Radio Grand would be like a giant wood cabinet with like the radio and the speakers and maybe even a record player all mounted in it. So it was this huge big box like an obelisk from 2001.
Well, that's what did it for me.
And yeah, the bass would really jump out. And that was back when basses weren't recorded particularly well.
Right.
No, they weren't a particularly upfront instrument on a lot of pop records.
But they would punch through these huge cabinets that in many cases had like a real large footprint, so to speak, and were really solidly built, so they would pump some bass.
That's right.
Ron, I wanted to ask you now we were talking about obviously you did the tribute shows and I know that in the past they've done a lot of Iveys, Badfingers, like meetups and things. Do you have any plans to I guess represent the Iveys and your I guess your legacy with the group and performing with them in the future? Is there any kind of I know that they do like the Beatles fests and these kinds of team ups. Is there anything that you have in store, I guess, coming this year or next year?
No, there's quite a few people who have suggested that after they'd seen that thing at the Swansea Grand, that Di and myself, and if we wanted to take anybody else on board, should go out on the road. But Di Jenkins isn't interested.
Is that right?
No, he's got his own thing going. He plays in a band with two of his sons. And quite frankly, at my time of life, I'd be quite happy to go to a convention and speak a bit and jump in on bass with somebody else. But as regards taking the Iveys out on the road, I think that's a bit of a non-event.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's no back catalogue. I mean, it's not like doing a Badfinger gig.
Right.
A Badfinger tribute. I mean, that's a totally different thing. There's a whole back catalogue of stuff. So I'm quite happy to... I think Dan Matavine is planning on putting out an album package of demos and early stuff and stuff off the BBC recordings of the Iveys. I don't know any more than that.
Well, I would follow
that. He's had issues with getting it sorted out legally, but that's the plan, I believe.
Because I think, there's a great legacy there. The Iveys is a huge part of the Badfinger story, obviously, and I believe that you are a important key player in this story, and I really do think that getting that story told and having the history being corrected, if you will, is a really important thing, and that's why I asked that because I'd like to see more of that, because it's been such a pleasure to be able to talk about these stories and get this history from you. And
I'm flattered that you think that way, but I don't think it's going to happen. An Iveys gig.
Well, not necessarily.
I can't see there being another. Unless there's another Pete Ham tribute, we'll see.
Right, but not necessarily a gig, but more for the when fans like to get together and actually hear and talk with somebody who is there. I mean, those kinds of events are kind of important.
Oh yeah, that sort of thing's fine. I'm okay with that, of course.
Yeah, but no Iveys. I won't make you sign any contracts or make you get together.
Can I just mention something I was involved with a couple of years ago?
I would love. We'd love that, please.
Well, one of your fellow countrymen, a chap named Steve Crater,
Right.
he put a band together online. It was to do a charity single for a suicide prevention charity. The working title of the band was The Boys of Rock and Roll. I actually did send Ed the link to the site. There's a tune on there called The Boys of Rock and Roll, actually.
I've got
and
a copy.
It's got loads and loads of players on it. Some of us from Swansea, Di's on it. I'm on it. I play bass on it. Crumbs, I can't remember it altogether. But have a listen. It's a worthwhile thing. The biggest snag of all, or the saddest thing of all, is that somebody managed to get hold of it and put it out on general availability, and it's completely scrubbed the whole idea of it. It was meant to have been a charity single, and any profit was going to go into the charity.
And it was leaked.
It just hit the cutting room floor because somebody else grabbed it and put it out there, and of course the actual whole idea was shot down in flames.
That's kind of that's the digital age too. You know, as soon as something is put out there, then it's shared and of course
it's so easy to blag it. Yeah.
Right. Ugh. That's a shame. Well, we have a copy of that, and we're gonna play that on the show today. So
okay.
We're looking forward to.
Have a listen to it first. You may not want to put it out, but it's great fun doing it.
Well, I tell you what, if it was worthy enough of being released without your knowledge, I'm sure it's good enough for this program. So, but I want to say that, Ron, it has been an absolute thrill and a pleasure to share your evening, our morning together, talking about your history with the group. And
that's great.
And
I wish I hadn't been so forgetful.
Oh, don't worry. We should. You know what? We'd love to check back in with you sometime in the future. And
you do that. That's great.
Yeah, and get you back on. And we'll kind of jog your memory a little bit more and find out some more some great details. I mean, this has been a great exercise in going through this wonderful history, and I'm so grateful that you could share it with me and Jeremy.
Seriously,
it's my
Ron.
pleasure. To everybody out there who's listening to this, thanks very much for listening.
You got it. Well, thank you, Ron, and to the best to you in 2015, and we'll stay in touch. And any events that you have coming up or whatnot, let us know, and we'll promote them on the program.
I got you. Okay. All the best to you then, Ed, and all the best to you, Jeremy.
Oh, thank you so much, Ron.
Take care, Ron. Thank you so much.
No worries. Bye.
You got it. Bye-bye. There it is.
Now that is all you're looking for in a guest.
That was great.
That's all you need.
Listen to that applause.
Yeah. There's a flange on it.
It sounds like it.